It's me. Hi everyone, welcome to the show, or to my floor. Today we're going to talk about sobriety, my journey with sobriety. Not a very easy topic for me to talk about. It makes me feel very existential. It has a lot of shame surrounding it, but I want to just be raw and honest and real with you, my internet friends, and tell you about my life and experience. But before we get into it, let's see what the cards have to say for us today. Woo! I'm borrowing some cards. These are actually my friend's cards, who was pretty pivotal in my sobriety journey. We have a message. My energy creates my reality. What I focus on is what I will manifest. That is so facts, you guys. Mindset is everything. Obviously, there's a level of privilege associated with the idea of manifesting, but I definitely think there's something to be said about thinking good thoughts and attracting good things, especially when it comes to yourself. If you think that you are an idiot, you will act like an idiot. But if you really believe the best in yourself, you will be able to express the best in yourself so much more often. Okay, let's get into it. Sobriety. My sobriety journey started a long time ago. The first time somebody pointed out that I might have a problem with substance was actually a therapist. I was seeing her for some eating related issues. And one day she just pointed out to me hey, you have a tendency to use substance to escape your problems. And I was like, oh, how dare you? So true. I don't want to get into too specific because I really want to avoid the triggers in this episode, but for the most part, the issue was using the substance alone. It wasn't necessarily that I was chugging a bottle of bourbon and going to the bar. It was that I was getting wasted alone in my apartment. For what? Something's going on. And I also knew that I had a tendency to just be kind of a peer pressurer, and just I don't know. I really felt like I had to step into this party girl persona. And listen, when she pointed it out, I may have been what? But it wasn't really that much of a surprise to me. So thus began my first bout of sobriety. And it came right after I landed a really big job dancing overseas. So I moved to Montreal and I think I was trying to be sober. But then one night I got so hammered and I barfed outside of my favorite, a world famous poutine place. And I was just this is not. And because I was now so aware of this substance use, it really got to me. So that was a pretty big turning point. The brand that I would eventually be working with very soon was a 21 plus company. So I was you know what, this is the perfect time to go sober. I decided to just totally cut it out because I was you know what, you're better than this. It actually was a pretty big success. I think I was sober for 6 months, but then my grandfather died. I was very close to my grandfather. He was he's my artist, kindred spirit. He's so special to me. And he died when I was halfway across the world. It was actually 2 days before my opening night of my first really big show. So just all around really, really tough. And I just went straight to the bar. And I got hammered. I think I took 6 shots of Jameson. I couldn't even cope with it. The sheer intensity of the pain, I just could not cope with it. And again, another really big red flag looking back. So, I went home, I missed my opening night and I started the healing process. Well, actually, no, I didn't start the healing process because I was home for 3 days and then I had to go back. I just had to go back to my job and go back to performing. So realistically, I really delayed that process. And I think I threw sobriety out the window subconsciously somewhere along the way because I went back and I just started partying. And then to make matters worse, a few months after I returned, I had a really terrible experience. I had a boss who I believe slipped something in my drink. And to sum it up very quickly, I woke up with my hands tied and not really any idea of what had happened. And then when I expressed a little bit of concern about it, I didn't really get a lot of help because I was kind of a belligerent drunk by that point. Everybody just thought oh my God, she got hammered again. But I had only had one glass of champagne that night. C'est la vie, regardless. Trauma, hello, I just started drinking more. By the time I finished that contract, I came home with a full-blown, I was a full-blown alcoholic, which also not to be controversial, but is a really big part of the culture on cruise ships. You get drinks for really, really cheap. The crew does. And even though I was under 21, like it wasn't that freaking hard. Everybody just like drinks all the time. So when I finally finished this contract, I mean, I had so much to deal with. I had this like trauma to deal with, the grief to deal with, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So I started to like really spiral, and it got bad enough that my mom noticed. So she called and got me into a doctor to get some medication or just to like seek some help. And I walked into this doctor, and within like 5 seconds, he's like, whoa, you got some ADHD. Pretty common knowledge now that undiagnosed neurodivergence can lead to substance issues because you kind of like self-medicate. And that's really what I was doing. Alcohol in particular was like a masking thing. And then also cannabis was like my personal like drug of choice. It got to the point where it was, I mean, out of control. We don't talk enough about the dangers of cannabis addiction because you guys, it is real. I'm so sorry to tell you. It's not something that should be taken lightly. I think like it's an amazing medication that can be used to help so many things, but if we're at the point where it's like daily use, you know, there might be a lot of long-term effects that you're not super aware of. Things like not being able to eat without it, like feeling really depressed and like fatigued all the time. Like these are signs of, obviously I'm not a doctor. I'm only speaking from the experience of somebody who has suffered from cannabis addiction. Cannabis is like a really tough one because I think people fall into two categories. One, they think it's like a drug on the level of heroin, or they think it's completely harmless. And I think it falls somewhere in the middle. Too much of anything is not a good thing. So if you find that it's starting to really affect your life or you can't function without it, if something is poking at you while you're listening to this, consider seeking some help. There's really no shame. And especially for Canadians, as it's been legalized and it's become more normalized in society, it's really important to recognize how something affects you. Let me get back to the story. I'm drinking, partying. Things are just, they have just spiraled out of control. I think I had tried to go sober like a million times over the course of those 4 years. But for the most part, I don't know, like, I was just really unwell. I was just really, really unwell. And this is like the thing about addiction. Like addiction is a symptom of trauma. It's not a choice. Like I didn't just wanna it's not a choice. It was out of my hands because I was even aware of it. And I couldn't deal with it, unfortunately, on my own. It's so easy to like villainize people who struggle with addiction because we see such a like intense version of it when you see people on the street and like, you know, all sorts of these like really, I don't know, just hard things to look at in society. But at the end of the day, these people are the exact same as you and I. They just have less support and they don't have somebody to lift them when they fell down. And that like is really sad, and they deserve so much more compassion and so much more support than our world gives them. I mean, it's such a flawed, the things I could say, especially like once I started getting treatment for this addiction, because I mean, spoiler alert, my family flew out to Toronto and gave me an intervention. Like, I'm not joking, like full intervention A&E style. If you've ever seen the show, I wake up to this, like, I hear my mom's voice. She lives 4,000 miles away. And then I hear my brother's voice and my dad's voice. I'm like, wait a second. I get out of bed and I see my whole family walking through my front door with this like Sons of Anarchy looking bodybuilder, muscular guy. And I make a joke. I'm like, is this my intervention? And nobody laughs. Turns out it was my intervention indeed. So I sat down, they read the letters. And you know, listen, there's like nuances when it comes to my family, like stepping in. I needed help. I knew I needed help. There wasn't 5 minutes in the day where I was sober. Like there just wasn't. It just wasn't like a thing. I could not handle life. And that was really like the core of it. Like I was so deeply, deeply traumatized from the things that had been happening to me and so unable to deal with my feelings and emotions that I just like numbed the pain in any way that I could. So fast forward, now I'm in rehab and it was a pretty intense experience. This is what I really learned. Like the choice is everything. Like if you want to be sober or if you want to like feel better in your life, like it has to be a choice. You have to legitimately like choose it. At first, it didn't go well in rehab because I felt like I had been forced there, which, you know, I had. Keep in mind, at the time of this like rehab and intervention, like I was at a really great place in my career. I had just signed the lease on my own studio. I had just like literally days before landed a job as executive director of this dance organization. So I had like hundreds of kids. The timing was crazy. So at first, I didn't make a lot of progress, to be honest, because I just didn't want to be there. I felt, I don't know. But then as the story goes, like trauma, this rehab facility was like a cabin kind of vibe. It wasn't like, don't think hospital, think like retreat. I shower in the men's facilities because we were separate. You know, the women's wasn't working. And my therapist walks in on me as I'm getting out of the shower. Obviously, I like freak out. He like kind of made some comment that made me feel like it was like my fault, even though the lock didn't work. And I had this huge like flashback. Something happened to me when I was a teenager where this kid like locked me in a bathroom, and you know, so I have this like big flashback, and I remember this memory that I hadn't remembered for like ever. Instead of being like, oh my God, I'm feeling these things and seeking out one of the counselors, I do what I do best, which is I run away because I can't numb it. You know, I ain't got no substance. I don't have a drink. I don't have a drop. I got nothing to make this pain go away. So I packed my bags and I went to the office and I was like, give me my phone back, because our phones were taken away. Like I didn't have any access to the outside world. And I was like, give me my phone. I'm leaving. They gave me my phone. I called an Uber and I left, because I like literally couldn't deal with it. Such a metaphor for like everything that I was going through, like just this like need to just run away. I just couldn't face things. So my sister, who is like, you know, the light of my life, in many ways, like the reason why I was able to heal so many of these like demons. She was the first person I reached out to for help way back when. I called her, and I think I went to her house actually, and she told me like, you don't have to go back if you don't want to, but if you want to, like, I'll drive you there, I'll get it all arranged and we'll go together. This rehab was not, like I said, like you can think of it like a retreat. This was a huge privilege that my family sacrificed so much for me to heal. I had this like great opportunity in front of me. Like, you can deal with all of your demons, because that's what it was. Like, I was just traumatized. I was deeply, deeply traumatized and unable to deal with my feelings. So I decided to deal with it. I said, you know what, screw it. And I went back and I healed. I've never been the same person. It has completely transformed me. I faced things inside of myself that I didn't think I was able to face. And like, it's such a subconscious thing, because like logically and like on a surface level, like, of course, yeah, I think I can deal with things. Like, I'm a pretty resilient person, but I actually couldn't. It's really hard to speak about like the experience itself. It was just such a deeply intense experience of like a bunch of addicts sitting around the table, strangers, people who don't even know each other, like discussing their deepest fears, the worst things they've done to people, like the ways that they've hurt people they loved, the things that have been done to them, the way that people they loved hurt them. I mean, the list goes on and on. The trauma bonding was like crazy. Rehab itself is like a whole story. I mean, I don't even, it's like it was such a crazy experience. But you know, honestly, what was harder than rehab was getting out of rehab and then like, reacquainting to regular life. Actually, 4 months after I got out, I tried to, and it didn't work, thankfully. But it was one thing to learn how to be sober in like a confined space where, like, you know, you didn't have to worry about a lot and you were extra safe, nurses, doctors everywhere. But it's another thing to go back to your real life and stay sober. I'm actually not like a 100% sober person, because what I learned, disclaimer for what I'm about to say, if you are an addict or an alcoholic, it's very likely that you will never be able to use that substance ever again. And your life is better for it. Addiction is a lifelong experience. We know that. I am about to tell you a little bit about, you know, my choices, and that involves like a more harm reduction kind of approach. But I just want you to keep in mind that this is not really doable for everybody. sobriety. I think in a lot of ways it's only doable for me because I went to rehab at such a young age, like before my prefrontal cortex was even hardened. Even with that, everybody is so different. So this is not a sign for you to experiment with substance. For me, I realized I had this like really rebellious tinge to me. And when I say like, no, you can't do something, like I just automatically do it. Or if I say like, you have to do something, I'll just do the other thing. Like, I don't know what it is. It's like, I have this like inherent desire to rebel or to like oppose, even with myself and my own goals. It's so fucking annoying. One of my worst qualities for sure. I had to kind of like learn how to use that to my advantage. I basically started saying that if I want to have a drink, like I can. Because when I restricted myself fully, and I was sober for a year, but I like binged. Like there was one time where I like wanted to have a glass of wine and I hated this non-alcoholic wine that I bought. It was so gross. And I just wanted one glass of red wine. I didn't want to get hammered. I just wanted a glass of red wine. So what did I do? I chugged the whole bottle. It was so chaotic. Like, what was the point of that? And so I was like, you know what? If I had let myself have that one glass of wine, instead of like shaming myself, would that have had a better outcome? And I experimented with that in a safe way. And I found that that kind of rule works better for me. So I drink like pretty rarely. It's like a couple times a year, or specifically just there's very certain people that I just feel safe enough with to drink with, because I am choosing to still engage with certain plant-based medications once in a while. I have to be so aware of like my relationship to them and how they affect me and what environment I'm doing. So it's like a constant battle and a constant reframe, and it's never ending. It changes all the time. Some people don't really appreciate when I use the word sober. Like I like to say that I practice sobriety. I'm not a sober person, but I'm sober most of the time, which is a huge win for me, because like I said, like for a long time, I couldn't go 5 minutes without being super fucked up. I like being sober. I love not drinking. I just love it. I like being present and aware. It's such a gift and it's such a great feeling. And not waking up like this with like crap all around you and cans and like not knowing what you did last night. I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. And I still have a really great time. I honestly do. I might even say that I have like more fun. And I know that sounds so wild, but I really do. Cause like, I just dance. Like I like to dance. Like you have to think of what is fun about going out to you. And for me, I realized like, I'm just not much of a mingler. So I like would drink to make mingling easier. But instead of like doing something to make something easier, like I just would lean into what I actually enjoyed about going out. And what I enjoyed about going out was dancing. And dancing doesn't require mingling and it doesn't require drinking. So I just go and I dance. I dance all night. I love dancing. It's also the only place I can dance. I'm so screwed up from my car accident from a couple of years ago. I'm like, I used to be a freaking professional athlete and now like I can't hold a water glass with my left hand. I could have fallen so far back into the deep end after my accident. I lost all the things that were like near and dear to me, but I didn't. I did start using cannabis again after the accident, which honestly it held a lot of shame for a long time, but I didn't go off the deep end, and I was able to like deal with this huge life-altering trauma. That is something I'm so proud of, and that has come from practicing sobriety. Acknowledging that you might have a little bit of an issue. Like, I don't want you to feel so ashamed. Everybody has an addiction. That was actually something funny in rehab. My counselor said, you have 3 addictions: work, your drug of choice, and your relationships. I was like, no, how dare you? Oh my gosh, don't call me out like that. But it was true. I'm addicted to love. I'm addicted to work, and like, it's escaping. That's what it is. I want to escape. Everybody wants to escape, but you have to be able to escape in a healthy way and do it in a way that's not like harmful to you long term. If you can't cope with things without that glass of wine or without that Benjamin, then you got to like reassess and reevaluate and challenge yourself so that you can grow and give more to yourself, because you deserve it. It's a journey. It's a long journey. It's a long process. All healing is. Isn't that just the point of life, right? Well, thank you so much for opening your mind up with me today. Don't forget to be kind to yourself and to others. Okay? Love you. Bye.